Hello and welcome to another podcast of Father and Joe. I'm Joe Rocky here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, I wanted to continue a conversation that we had 2 weeks ago here about the emotions that Christ went through and how, at the end of the day, the same emotions that human beings felt 2,000 years ago are the same as today. And the only real difference between us and the people in the Bible is that we know how the story ends because we've been able to read it before, and they were living through and they didn't know what tomorrow was going to be. But at the end of the day, that's it. And that's in some ways how it can relate to all of our lives here today and always will. And I wanted to kind of, focus on some of the stuff that we were talking about in the last episode as well, about how Christ went through everything in the Passion for us, but it wasn't to build up spiritual currency to cash a check on someone's behalf. It was to overcome an evil at the end of the day. As we've mentioned before, that death is a form of an evil, and Christ overcame it. And as we look at it, by overcoming that, he's given us the keys and the ability, in combination with free will, to step up and make ourselves better, to be able to follow his will, as we mentioned in our last episodes, make ourselves more capable, rather than hiding away and hiding from it. And I wanted to talk about how Jesus did that. He knew that he was going to face challenges throughout his ministry, throughout his profession. He knew that people were going to doubt him, that people were going to try to make him look bad, and he didn't stop. He had processes where he would talk to the people around him and try to teach them. He gave them opportunities to test themselves when he sent each of them out in pairs of two to see if they could do this while he was still around. Kind of, you go out, try this, and then we'll come and regroup, see what was good for you and what wasn't. Think of that as an example of, sending a teenager out in the world, letting them see how life is, and then still teaching them before they leave forever. That's kind of the thought that I've had there. There's many business examples you could do, but core concept. And he went through all of these different feelings. And ultimately, by teaching by example, Jesus gets to do, because he's God, something that none of the rest of us will be able to do. He gets to come back and see what his work was. He was able to go out, teach everyone, do the culmination of his mission in overcoming death, and then see how everyone reacts to it. See how, as we hear on Easter Sunday, how the women are totally in belief, all in, and then they run to go and find the apostles, and how some of them are not on board, they're doubting. You think of Timothy in that example, and some of them figure it out immediately. So I kind of want to have the conversation of the after the Easter side of the fence, of the emotions of Christ at that point, in seeing essentially the fruits of his labor and how people had benefited from it, and how, to a certain extent, we in the church are still part of that ongoing mission of accepting everything that Christ went through and being able to be a part of it moving forward.
Yeah, I love the way that you present that, Joe. The feelings of Jesus as he sees the fruits of his labor. The response. I just also learned that one of the key, the highest correlation of marriages staying together, the highest factor correlated with marriages staying together, is how spouses respond to those micro bids of affection. When the wife says, "Oh, I love this whatever in this catalog," does the husband actually say, "Oh, let me see," or "Oh, that's wonderful, I like that"? Does he respond? It's a micro bid for affection. She's She's saying, are you paying attention to me? Do you like what I like? Are you willing to go out of yourself to give me that moment in time? But in simple things, offering opening arms for a hug, or making other little gestures. Those micro bids for affection are really, and the response to them are what really holds marriages together. And so we can think of what Jesus has done, giving everything, and then he's looking for those responses from us. What's the response to all that he's given? Are we able to see? Are we able to make that act of faith? Are we able to do what he's asking us? Are we, and when he sees those little responses, or responses to even the little gestures that are there, that delights him. He gets delighted by that. That's part of what holds our relationship with him together. And so, yeah, there's God. God truly delights in us. It's a little bit paradoxical, because God is omnipotent and he is totally fulfilled in himself, and he's in need of nothing on the one hand. On the other hand, he's extended himself as love does, and the response that he gets matters to him, and he experiences that also as love, as presence. And so our response really matters. And when he sees that in Mary Magdalene and the apostles, and we see so much patience as well. I mean, he comes alongside of them and explains to them. And even when he says to the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, do you not understand? Are you still so slow of heart to believe that the Christ had to suffer and to die, and on the third day be raised? And he walks through all of the scriptures referring to him, which was not a small amount. We'd love to have that scriptural commentary to turn to for our learning and prayer. But he comes still with great patience and with great tenderness and with great love, and he helps us to receive the fruits of all that he has done for us, and helps us to grow in holiness. And the more that we grow in holiness, the more the Father sees the Son in each of us. And the more the Father delights in us as he sees his Son emerging more and more. He sees his Son in a real way, and because we've been baptized and his Son is truly within us, his face is behind our face, but our face becomes more aligned with less of a flat shield and more of a contoured surface around the face of Jesus. And our face becomes his face more and more, and the Father sees us and delights in us as he delights in his only begotten Son. So that reality of the Father's delight, as we allow ourselves to be conformed to Jesus, responding to the Father's love, all of that is happening, of course, in this post-resurrection period, starting with Mary and the apostles and the disciples, and then continuing all the way to the present day to us.
And and as you think about that example you gave there of him talking to the two people walking down the street after the resurrection, it kind of makes me think of this starting from Jesus' perspective of Jesus knew what he was doing the whole time. I mean, it was his mission. He was the main actor. He can control himself. And so when he knows what he went through and he knew everything that went into it, and then to see essentially what I believe to be just two regular people who kind of followed it, what was going on, and they're just going home after the Passover as the rules and the customs of their time said, and they're just talking about what happened over the course of the last week. I mean, obviously this was a big deal. Not too often does the chief priest create a riot to kill someone. I mean, that's a weird thing. So you're going to talk about it. So to have Jesus there, know that he went through all of that, and have these guys not get it, you can see how you can have that, well, why did I do all of this, get really frustrated, as we can experience situations like that in our own life. Like, I put everything into this and you're just not getting it. Like, how do you not get how important this is? But he does the opposite. He essentially does humility in the sense that he says, okay, we're going to just start from an earlier starting point and get to why this was important. with an understanding that, yes, Jesus was a great scholar. He knew the law inside and out, from both a divine perspective, but as being taught it from a human mind perspective. And he was very educated with this. So, the same way that it might be that a mechanic teaches you how an engine works. Well, at the beginning, you probably have no idea. There's a bunch of shiny things and it's dirty. I have no idea what's going on here. How is it both? How is it simultaneously shiny and dirty? I don't get it. But that's how it works. And then you actually go to, okay, this does this, that, and the other. And he was humble enough not to get upset and angry that people didn't understand the purpose and what Jesus went through, but actually willing to go down to where they were and to teach them up to that point. And from my perspective, is that seems like a great deal of humility, almost to the extent where it's greater than being willing to die. But after already going through all of that, and then having people not get it, to be able to come back and to teach them that. And from their perspective, I think that most of us as individuals would be like them in an objective standpoint. This guy essentially became a celebrity over the last 3 years. Most people didn't know about him until the last year or so. And we came and saw him teach in the temple for the last 2 or 3 years. He makes some sense. We're seeing what he's saying. But I live way over here and he's doing his thing over there. So I only really interact with him during the main events that pull us in. And let's also be serious. Most of us are more engaged in our daily lives of trying to figure out how to make sure there's food on our table than sitting down and reading all the time, let alone reading the Bible at that time. So to have Jesus pull out a laundry list of quotes about him, of course he knows it, that was his profession, but a guy who's a regular baker or a farmer may not. And I think that those two people in the Bible kind of are the easiest ones for us to kind of relate to, that we have a kind of an idea of what's going on and we get that things are different because of this, but how it's all going down can be a little bit confusing and not gathering it. So I wanted to kind of dwell upon that, because I think that in a certain sense that's where most of us are in our day-to-day lives,
Trying to make sense out of all of it.
yeah. I mean, think about
Yeah.
it. They didn't know what's going on. The priest who's in charge of everything just caused a riot to kill someone. Like, that has to be mind-blowing and confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you make great points, and certainly the travelers on the road to Emmaus. In fact, it names one of them as Clopas, but it doesn't name the other one, and that would, what one could say, that was intentional, so that we can put our own name in there, to make your point, Joe. And then also Emmaus, it's not entirely clear where Emmaus is. So Emmaus it's not anywhere else in the Bible. And, there's a place now that's recognized as being Emmaus, but there's not a good tradition of that having been the case. And so even the place that they were going to seems to be nondescript. And so it's wherever we're leaving to go to, wherever we're wandering off despondently, wherever our home is away from the Lord, we can put ourselves in the place of that disciple and know that Jesus walks alongside of us. I'm actually looking at my computer screen, which has an image of the Jesus meeting the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. And it's the cover of the book that Father Tom Acklin and I wrote on spiritual direction, which we see as a kind of Emmaus experience, the spiritual director in the person of Christ walking besides, the spiritual director as the friend walking beside the other friend. And in the midst of that conversation, Christ becomes present. And so accompanying people and hearing their woes, their stories, All of these things are beautiful Emmaus experiences that Christ himself enters into. And so, as you say, most of us are in this place. All of us, to some degree or another, are in this place. So, what do we do? Well, let's walk together, first of all. Let's accompany each other. Let's walk along that path together, and let's talk about it. Let's try to make sense of it. And in the process of doing that, Christ has a way of showing up and the light coming on. In some way, it's what you and I are doing, Joe. We obviously are not scripting these podcasts. You have some questions, and we talk about them. And I think we both learn during this time, and hopefully our listeners are also learning, and we're drawing close to the Lord. The Lord is entering into our conversation. So it's a great model for us. If you have doubts, you have confusion, you don't know what's going on, you're hurt and despondent, discouraged in your life, and well, the first thing is draw alongside another human being and start to talk about it, start to try and make sense of it. Bring it to the scripture, bring it to prayer, invite Jesus also into it. Sometimes our confusion sessions become rant, complaining, bitterness sessions. That's not super helpful. But if we can also maybe even explicitly invite the Lord to be a part of it, say a little prayer, come Holy Spirit, help us, Jesus. We want to know the truth. Lead us in whatever this difficulty is in our lives.
And one of the things that came up whenever we were having our discussion about the emotions Jesus went through during Lent was how sometimes as individuals we have a tendency to not want to show our problems. Like we will come out and show everyone after we fix whatever our own issue was and kind of get self-absorbed in that sense. But as we've gone through and discussed here, to your point, we're actually better being open to them. And that's open to our problems and being out with other people. That's part of going back to the beginning of this episode, the extension of love. I mean, that's, you have to show your own vulnerabilities to be able to receive love. And, in a certain extent, that's what you started with by saying that it's why God cares about our attentions and our love, in that he became vulnerable by creating us, in a sense that we could have completely not followed or not cared or anything. But by continuing to come back to him and being able to listen is an excitement of love. So that notion of I only want to come out when I'm perfect, or I want to hide the world from my problems, seems to be a very flawed one, unless I'm oversimplifying this, that would actually hold us back from going down the mission and walking with as a disciple, as you just mentioned right there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have to admit that we have troubles and that we need help and that we have questions, and that is very vulnerable. And vulnerability is what makes intimacy possible, the union that love brings. When we expose our vulnerability, our questions, our discouragements, our troubles, when we disclose that to someone and they receive it with love and respond to it, it gives us a chance to be more deeply bonded together, and that's a great gift. And God is love, and as love grows, God's presence also grows very much in our midst, and that brings us to that fullness of perfection that we were talking about earlier, I guess, in our last podcast, talking about habits and the ways that we are made for something, where there is a kind of fulfillment of our person, and we're aiming towards that, and God is helping us to grow towards that, and our responses to him also help us to grow towards that. It's the new life of the resurrection coming alive within us, transforming us from within. And so as we respond to these situations, as we open our hearts in love to another human being, and in the process also to God, it helps us move along that path of fulfillment, of interior growth. And then we experience that joy and delight, which mirrors the joy and delight of God as he sees us. He always sees us as we were, as we are, and as we will be. And he delights in all of that. And so we also get an experience of as we were, as we are, and as we are becoming, as we will be, as we open our hearts and share with another and experience that intimacy of love, being understood and received.
And as you said that, a thought or question, I guess, came into my mind about that was when we are together in happy relationships, almost inherently we're doing something virtuous. You can't really have a truly happy relationship if you're constantly lying to each other or coveting each other or wanting to murder each other. So, therefore, you have to be doing something that's on the virtuous side or at least neutral. And my question there is, even if it's not explicit in the sense that, we're doing this and we're emulating God, um, does that still, I don't know, count's not the right word, but that's the kind of the essence I'm trying to say. Does that still create the positive effects that essentially we've been discussing here? So
To,
like
to,
like like when Jesus is there, he's explicitly talking about the scriptures. Um and we have those conversations in our lives where we're explicitly talking about something religious. But if we're just together in relationship with our family or whatever, and it's a positive and happy situation where we're using our examples as the virtues, but talking about something like Major League Baseball or something, just something that's not religion, I guess is essentially the way to say it, something that's neutral in that regards. Um, is that still something that's beneficial, or do we need to have this feeling that, oh, I didn't talk about Jesus explicitly today, so I'm doing something wrong? So
mm,
that's what I'm trying to ask, and I kind of botched the
no,
way of
that's great.
saying that.
No, that's thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, that's a really important question. Um, well, some things are infinitely deep. So I'm not sure if baseball is, but there are themes in baseball: the underdog, the struggle, the comeback, the triumph, the self-sacrifice, the cooperation, the team spirit, the forgiveness, the general. There are themes in baseball which are infinite, which do really participate in Christ. And so, um, likewise in our lives, if you're a baseball player and you're sharing about your struggle because you're in a slump, or your excitement because you hit 3 home runs, there can be a real sharing of the heart in that. So there are many things that are means to an end. The end is always God, and the human person is also an end in himself. So whenever our conversations really lead us to the human person, the human heart, and those things are infinitely deep. They're all participating in God, we could say. Now, by never talking about God, we end up losing sight of the heights, and we tend to flatten out. It's like uh, we need to lift up again. I was talking with some folks about why we celebrate Holy Week in such, we put a lot of effort into Holy Week. It's like a lot of stuff. And you might say, well, why are we doing this? I mean, let's just simplify it and, say a couple prayers and move on with life. But we've got to, if it's worth it, then it's worth it, and we have to really lift up to see the full thing. We need the full thing because everything else is a kind of one-off of that. And if we lose the original image, then we'll start to devolve in a lot of ways. When we lose God, then even our humanity is diminished by that. When we focus on God, our humanity itself is lifted up. And so if we're living in a religious context, we're participating in religious things. If some of our conversations, that is to say, even our participation at Mass and things like that, are religious, that has a way of elevating everything else. A high tide raises all ships, I think is the something like that they say. So we need to raise up the whole dialogue at points so that all of our dialogue is a little bit more Christ-centered, even.
So with that being said, Father, you kind of cut out with us there at the end of the episode. So We thank you for being with us here today, and we thank everyone for listening, and we'll be with you again here next week.